This was probably one of the most depressing things I've ever seen, and by far the most depressing piece of content that we've ever seen in the MCU. Because, whoa, there's some deep stuff going on here. Like, there is a lot of emotion in this episode, both for the characters in the episode and me watching the episode. Like, there was a lot going on here. So, wow, we're in the home stretch, guys. Literally next week, episode 6, the season/series finale of the Moon Knight Disney Plus series. We just got episode 5 on Disney Plus, and we're going to be talking about it today because, wow, a lot happened. Like, a lot I wasn't expecting, especially for them to go this deep on Disney Plus, of all things. I'm honestly surprised they went that far, but they did, and I'm glad they did because this episode was amazing. But guys, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this and break down this episode. So of course, spoiler warning, if you haven't seen the episode yet, make sure to go check it out on Disney Plus. This is again Moon Knight episode 5, titled Asylum. And so, of course, the last episode ended with Marc and Steven running into this crazy Egyptian hippo goddess known as Taweret, who in Egyptian mythology is the god of, like, resurrection and women and children and all that stuff. So this time, when we start off this episode, we go from that to now Marc waking up in Dr. Harrow's office again, and we do this a couple times throughout the episode, and then when the guards try to detain him, he's all of a sudden back with Steven and Taweret. And we get a little bit of explanation as to what's going on here. So, first of all, they're dead. Steven and Marc, they are dead. And this is kind of like an afterlife. This is the realm of Duat. And so this realm is kind of a purgatory type thing because it's perceived differently for each person. And it's perceived as something familiar to that person. And so we get this part where Taweret rips out both of their hearts to balance them, but the scale keeps on moving, so each heart is incomplete. So they must uncover the truth and relive each other's memories to then kind of balance things out and become whole, which was really interesting and I thought was a great way to actually go across showing Moon Knight's origin and just going through all these flashbacks and memories for both of these characters, actually. So it's basically like a hallway with like a bunch of different doors, and each door has a different memory in it. And the first door that we go into, they walk into a room which seems to be like a cafe full of dead bodies just sitting at the tables. And it turns out they're all people that Marc has killed. And so of course this is pretty traumatic, literally a bunch of dead bodies sitting right there, until a boy shows up. So Steven follows him, and that is Marc as a child. We find out he actually had a brother and a mom and a dad, and we see where that Laters Gators thing came from in A Wild Crocodile. So that was cool, seeing the origin of that and seeing some other references as well. But Marc and his brother, they go off and they're playing together, and they're pretending to be Dr. Stephen Grant and Rosser from that Indiana Jones kind of parody rip-off movie that we saw Marc had been watching when he first showed up at the asylum in last episode. But then Marc takes his brother into this cave where his brother actually ends up drowning, and his mom blames Marc. And this was really one of the things I both loved and hated about the episode, because I hate that his mother was like this, but I love that they're actually portraying it, because it just adds to the character so much, because literally, like, she just blames him for everything, and she just, like, rips away from his life, just completely ignores him, and anytime she does see him, she's just blaming him of, like, it's your fault, oh, you were jealous, and, like, all this stuff, and it's like, whoa, something is wrong with her. But, I mean, she did just lose her son. But after this, years later, Marc ends up running away from home, and you can see kind of that bond between him and his father, where it's like, his father understands, like, dude, your mother's crazy, but, you can't just run away, but he does anyway. And then we flash forward a couple more years to the dig site where Bushman killed everyone, including Layla's dad, And this is, of course, where Marc was shot, and he crawled inside this temple and was about to commit suicide, actually. This was one of the moments that I was like, whoa, this is on Disney+. But yeah, he had a gun underneath his throat, and he was about to commit suicide when Khonshu starts talking to him. And this is where we have the origin of Moon Knight, where Khonshu revives Marc as Moon Knight. It was really cool. But then all of a sudden we wake up in Dr. Harrow's office again. And he says that, oh, you've been reliving your memories and all this stuff. Again, trying to make us question, like, is this actually real or is it not? But then finally, after this, we go to that one forbidden memory that Marc was trying to keep Steven away from. But we finally get to see it when we go into Marc's bedroom as a child. And his mom is banging on the door. And inside, Marc is sitting there on the floor. He's looking up at a poster of that Tomb Busters or whatever it was called with Dr. Stephen Grant. And all of a sudden, he switches over to the Stephen Grant personality. And this is where we get kind of the big reveal that Marc made up Stephen. Like, there was a quote on the poster that said something about, like, without fear. So Marc somehow created this alternate personality who would have this happy life and was kind of like a stress ball and was able to just switch over whenever he was feeling stress and pain, and everything would just be all fine and dandy. And this is one thing I'm a little confused by, because how did he create another personality within him? Because it's not like just like an imaginary friend or like just pretending to be something else. Like, this is a completely separate personality, and the fact that in this asylum they're two separate entities, I don't know exactly how that works. That part's a little confusing. But then we get some more abusive mom as she comes in, grabs the belt, and then we don't actually get to see it, but still we hear that she's whipping her child with a belt. Like, she is full on beating her son, and that I like child abuse. I just feel so bad, and I love that this is part of a story. I'm loving that Disney Plus was willing to go that far, because it just adds so much to this character. And so, of course, Steven is freaking out over all of this, but then Marc reveals that his mother is dead. So we saw in the first couple episodes, when it was just pretty much Stephen Grant, that, you know, he was calling his mother. And there was kind of this theory that was going around of like, oh, what if his mother is actually dead, but he just doesn't know it? And that's the case. Their mom is dead. So I don't know exactly how he was calling his mom, though, and like talking to her. Did he just like is Steven really that insane that he thought he was talking to someone, but really like maybe he never even dialed the phone or anything like that? It's really interesting to think about. But then after this, we wake up again in Dr. Harrow's office, but this time it's Steven waking up there and not Marc. So Harrow actually ends up calling Mrs. Grant, and again, he could have just been pretending. But this is when Steven finally admits that my mom is dead. So then flash forward a couple more years, we have Marc going to his mom's funeral, but he doesn't actually go inside. He's just outside, and you can see his father looking out at him, telling him to come in, and Marc's not going to go in there. He just completely breaks down. You can see that he's wearing a yarmulke, of course, a reference to how in the comics Marc Spector is Jewish, so that was pretty cool bringing that in there as well. But he's just sobbing on the ground, and all of a sudden switches over to Stephen Grant. And again, it's kind of like that stress ball where it's like when you switch over to Steven, everything's like all good and it's like the perfect life and everything. And so he just goes on, and Marc says that this is when their lives started to bleed together, is when his mother died. So then at this point, we're nearing the end of the episode, where we end up back on the ship with Towerette, and all of a sudden these zombies start coming up on the ship, and these are the zombies of all those victims and those people that Marc killed as a mercenary and as Moon Knight. So we get this cool fight scene, because of course, you know, it's a Marvel, it's a superhero show, so you gotta have some cool action scenes in every episode. So we get this, it's a really cool battle, but as Steven is fighting them, because he kind of realizes, like, oh, if Marc can do this, then I can do it too. So Steven is fighting them, and it's really cool and everything, but he falls off the boat. And then he kind of, like, turns to stone and freezes there. And I think Steven died, which is insane, because now what does this mean? Because all of a sudden after this, then the scales are balanced, and then Marc is now in the field of reeds, which is kind of like the afterlife, like the heaven type thing. But did Steven just die, and can he come back? Because, I mean, he turned to stone, and like I said, it was such an emotional episode, and I've definitely preferred Steven as a character just because he's funnier, he's more lighthearted and everything. But, you know, in the comics, Marc is the main personality. So is that what they're doing here? Like, are we going to have Steven come back later? And also that third personality that we never even saw in this episode, which I don't really know what they're doing with that, because I almost completely forgot about that. But we do have that third personality, which was teased in both the last two episodes. I thought would be revealed in this episode, but wasn't. So I don't really know what's going on here, but it's so interesting and so intriguing, and also super depressing because Steven might be dead, which would really suck. And I really hope we do get him back in some shape or form. I just don't know how they could do that. But guys, that was Moon Knight episode 5 on Disney Plus. Definitely my favorite episode of the 5 so far. It was insane, and again, just crazy to see that Marvel and Disney were willing to go this far on Disney Plus, and I loved it because it just added so much to the story and so much to these characters, and I'm loving this. I'm so excited to see how things end off in next episode, because, you know, the way things are kind of left right here, you'd think there'd be more than one episode left of this series, but there's none. That's usually one of the problems with these Marvel Disney Plus shows, is that, like, they set up so much and then it's kind of like a rushed ending, which it looks like will probably happen here, but hopefully it sticks to landing. We'll see. And if it does, then this could be my favorite of all of the MCU Disney Plus shows so far. But for now, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think about Moon Knight episode 5? And of course, let me know all your thoughts, theories, and predictions for next week's season/series finale with Moon Knight episode 6. So guys, thanks so much for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed this video, and hit the subscribe button so I can keep you up to date on everything that goes on in the Marvel life.